What's going on, everybody? Welcome to TEPS podcast or the Everything Paranormal Show. Guys, we're going to do a little bit of a break from the normal paranormal stuff, which is our normal. So it's not paranormal. I don't know. Anyways, guys, this is going to be episode 208, I believe. But since Stacey is our resident sort of expert on a lot of the oddities and things and spirituality stuff, and he also has a sort of like a preppers class. I mean, I'll let him maybe explain that a little bit later, but I think it's self-explanatory. But as some of you may or may not know, he's an instructor on Udemy, and Udemy. If you go look him up, you can find all of his courses reasonably priced, very well priced actually. And he has a preppers course as well in there, maybe more than one. I don't know. I'll let him talk about that. But guys, the reason why we decided, so Stacey and I was talking, this was Stacey's idea because he's down in Louisiana. He gets hit with hurricanes a lot more. We've had, obviously, even here in my area, Northeast Tennessee, we've been devastated. I've been going to homes here recently that's been completely flooded, and now some are total losses, some are repairable. I'm going to the ones to help fix things with internet and stuff like that. So it's definitely affects a lot of people, and clearly Florida is getting ready to get hit hard with the storm surge. Hopefully a lot of people's been able to make it out. I know there's been a lot of talk about people were stuck with like the highways, but I know they've been trying to clear a lot of that. So we'll try to get on a little bit of that. I'm trying to avoid some of the politics of this. There's a lot of political heat right now on both sides that are pointing fingers and all this other stuff. But our goal, Stacey really wanted to make sure that people, not just for this hurricane, obviously it's probably a little late for Florida on this, but future disasters and future hurricanes and even not just hurricanes, but just disasters in general, you want to be prepared for. And so there, hopefully we'll be able to cover some things. I think some could be obviously common sense, but some people, they need to be told that. So Stacey, what is your when did you first really start getting involved with prep stuff and then offering a course and everything?
Well, I went through Katrina. So since then it's been sort of, you had back in the day in the early, 2000s, they had that show Doomsday Prepper, which was totally obnoxious when it came to the whole idea of prepping. And before then there wasn't even the term prepper. In the all the way up until like the 60s, having food and being prepared was just a normal way of life. You didn't brag about it or whatever, that you're prepared for disaster. That was just common sense.
Right.
People after the Great Depression it really realized that banks were not to be trusted. It took decades for people to actually trust their banks again into the 70s and the 80s. But the idea of having stores of food and your supplies was just normal, everyday common sense, because you don't know when anything's going to happen, whether it be a natural disaster or a personal disaster. You lose your job for 6 months. If you don't have extra food stored up and you run out of money, it gets pretty tough pretty quick. And if you have all of these things stored, it's a savings account. And in this time that we're living in now with runaway inflation, and they keep saying that inflation's down, but down from what?
Right.
People are, if you look at your receipts, and they have this on the internet all over the place, people who bought food at Walmart prior to the lockdown, and they have their receipt, and they go and they buy the exact same items that they bought then, the price has gone up 400%.
Well, and look, just to interject, here's a perfect. And by the way, hi, Kat. We see you in the chat. Just wanted to say hi. She said hi. Good evening.
Hey, Kat.
No. But check this out. Okay, so some of you may or may not know, I've lost some weight. I started doing carnivore, and
Mhm.
I'm now like 10 and a half months. Okay. I made a video about like how to do carnivore kind of cheap, right?
Mhm.
And I made it like a while back, but within 10, it's probably been maybe what 8 or 9 months, because I think I did it maybe after a month or two of being in carnivore. But the point is in that video, I talked about where you can get a case of 60 eggs from Walmart even for like $9 and change or whatever. I went in to get eggs, another case of eggs yesterday, and it was like almost $13. It was like 12 and change. That's $3 increase, you
Mhm.
know, just within a year's time frame. This isn't even like the previous eggs being going up. This is
Mhm.
just within the last year, another $3
Yeah.
on top
That
of
that's
things. So this is
30%.
what I'm saying.
That's 30% right there. And they keep lying to us. The government is lying to us over and over again about what the numbers are, the job numbers, the inflation numbers, the unemployment numbers. All of these are lies.
Well,
Not
think about
one.
this. All the unemployment numbers, yeah, more people are having to work. Unemployment is probably down because we're having to work more to pay for things. I mean, I'm working 3 jobs. I mean, there's other people that's having to go out and get 2, 3 jobs now.
Well, they
So,
broke it
yeah,
down. The unemployment numbers, the way that they're at, if you look at it in a line chart, there is a 40% difference between the number of native born Americans who are unemployed as opposed to the illegals that are unemployed. The government has created a whole bunch of jobs and then given them to the illegals to pad their unemployment numbers. It is outrageous that the taxpayers are actually paying for this to be lied to. But that's not what this is really about. That whole thing.
right.
The idea though is that,
It's so easy to go down those rabbit holes,
oh
man. It
yeah.
really is. Like,
I mean, we could go off on tangents with that for hours. But the idea is being prepared for any kind of disaster that comes along. It's like having a first aid kit. You gotta have band-aids in the house in case you get a boo-boo. You might as well get prepared for other things that can come down the pike. Now, most Americans only have about 3 days worth of food in their house. That is ridiculous. Anything can happen inside of a 3-day period, and the stores only have 3 days worth of food in them. And that's when people buy them. When there's a panic, they don't buy. They just bust
right,
in the store and grab whatever they can and run out. And they don't get resupplied. So you're left with nothing. And that's why people are running out and buying toilet paper. You know, it's ridiculous. You don't eat. I mean, you can eat toilet paper. It's just not very nutritious.
right.
But having things that are outside the system in your home when you need it is what is crucial. Now, a lot of people get overwhelmed with all of the information that is out there. I mean, I have a course that is on prepping for beginners. I have a course on prepping cryptocurrency for preppers, because the financial system that we're going into is collapsing. It is,
Right.
and it's not because of Democrat or Republican. Well, technically it is. Nixon took us off the gold standard. When he did that, the fiat system, which has been tried many, 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 many times throughout history, has failed 100% of the time. When you're on pure fiat and not backed by anything, by gold or any kind of commodities, the fiat system always collapses. And the
Right.
life cycle is 50 years. And right now, we're on year 52. The system is collapsing. That's why the inflation is what it is. They're robbing Peter to pay Paul because it's a Ponzi scheme.
Right.
Uh, that system is being reset, and they're going to be resetting it to the CBD, what they're calling central bank digital currencies. Most people won't notice the difference because they use their debit card or their Apple Pay to pay for stuff, and it happens the same way in the background. But you won't be able to have cash. Paper
Right.
money will go away. You'll just have the CBDC the digital currency that the government is going to create, and they're going to give it to you when you beg for it, meaning everything's going to get turned off and everyone's going to be like really, really upset. And
Oh yeah.
they know the length that they can go. It's been tested many times. Cyprus and Greece, they tested the system of shutting everything off in Cyprus just a few years ago, and it was the test bed for what they're going to do to us. Bank of America, just 2 days ago, they had a glitch, and every one of their accounts went to zero. They fixed the glitch within 12 hours, but everybody's accounts effectively went to zero, and nobody could use their Bank of America stuff.
That must have felt great.
Oh, wow. They still wanted your money to pay for your mortgage and stuff, but as far as you getting money out of the ATM or using your debit card at a gas pump, all that stuff, it was turned off. And like I said, they called it a glitch, but they're testing the system to do that universally across the board. And
yeah, and I want to get into, so what I want to do is but I wanted to say hi to Terry Lynn and just let her know, hey, I hope you feel better. I know she's not feeling good, and so she may not be able to finish watching the show or whatnot. So just wanted to say hi to her and wish her the best to get better. I know Kat did as well. And then what I wanted to also get into with you is let's kind of look at disaster prep in a whole, and let's look at, so what is like the immediate, like we're talking like somebody who's just like you said, somebody who's like got like a couple days worth of food in their fridge.
Yeah.
Like they maybe they've got like, because some people might have canned goods. Now, admittedly, myself, I'm a carnivore. So a lot of stuff I eat is all fresh stuff. I don't actually have canned goods. I don't have anything in the cupboards. Like literally hardly at all, other than spices. However, I will say I've got some Patriot Supply stuff coming. So I'm gonna have some backup foods, but I don't want to. I digress. So let's just say the average person that has a couple days worth of food, maybe some shit in their pantry, but obviously they're not going to make it long. What's the first things that they should start considering?
Well, in that kind of scenario, you're kind of like already screwed, because if in a disaster scenario like a hurricane but
we're talking about prep here, so
if you're going to prep
right
to do this sort of, you have to think in terms of what kind of foods you're getting, your fresh foods, your canned foods, and you should have short-term, medium-term, and long-term foods. Now, your short terms are your fresh stuff, your vegetables, your meats that you have in the fridge, not in the freezer. Your freezer stuff can be medium to long-term, depending on whether there's power going on or not.
Right.
If it's just a scenario where you lose your job and you just have to eat whatever you've got, having a stocked freezer is, probably your favorite option. But in disaster scenario, you want to have stuff that's shelf stable, that is medium term and long term. Medium term is stuff that you can still buy that is freeze dried. They have freeze dried fruits. They have dehydrated stuff in bags. Canned foods can be medium term or long term, depending on the kind of can that you use. The convenience aspect is what's the difference. The pull tab cans, those are medium terms. They have a shelf life of 2 years, because that seam that they create on the can actually seeps oxygen in, and it actually loses its,
because it's almost like a perforation in a way.
Yeah, it loses it, and it'll go for a little bit longer than 2 years, because you don't really know how long it's been sitting on a warehouse shelf.
Right.
But 2 years is the life expectancy of the pop top. If you got a can opener kind, those things are practically forever. I mean, they're cracking those things up from World War II, and they're still good.
So far what you're saying is like, you should look at time span. So you need to learn shelf lives of
Yes.
different products.
Right.
And then also it sounds to me like you're saying convenience. Like, is this something that you can just like pop open easily with your fingers and
Hmm.
eat right out of the can or out of the package? Or is this something that's going to take a little bit of fire, a water, perhaps, so basically learning how the food works and shelf life.
Right. And calorie count too. I mean, you want to actually look at whether you're male, female, and then your age demographic, where you're at. Like a 21-year-old male is going to consume or need twice as many calories as you will, uh, simply because their body is actually still growing muscle mass and other things. They
Right.
burn the energy a lot quicker. So they need literally just for daily amounts twice as much, 2,500 calories, 2,200 calories if you're a female at 21 age. When you start getting into 40 and up, you can cut that calorie count in half. And which is also kind of deceiving too, because sugar has a lot of calories and not much nutrition. So you
Right.
can, take your calorie count in pure sugar and you're still going to starve to death because you're not actually putting any nutrition in your body.
So it's like really you almost have to like plan out a diet ahead of
Yeah.
time and say, hey, worst came to worst, here's what I need for here's how many calories I can eat minimally to survive.
Hmm.
And I think males are like normally what 1,500, females around 1,200 is about the average like kind of dietary
Yeah.
roughly guidelines. But like so you kind of say, okay, this is this, and then I got my shelf life and ease of convenience, all these things, but what's the nutritional value I'm getting from this stuff?
Hmm.
Because if it's like you said, if it's like sugar, things like that, or something that's like even high in sugar and it seems like it has a lot of calories, it may not give you a lot of nutritional value.
Exactly.
But anyway,
That's
and
what
I know Kat just said too that she stays away from, as a prepper, she likes to stay away from pop top stuff.
Yeah, as a rule of thumb for your storage, if you get short shelf life stuff, like if you go through like a can of tuna a week, pop tops are fine. It's one of these things where you just don't want to put it on in your closet and forget about it because it's going to be nasty when you pull it back out.
Right.
But
Well,
freeze
that's
dried
the thing
food,
is, a lot of people have soups, Campbell's soups and stuff like that. That's been in their pantry for probably more than 2 years.
yeah,
So
and it's
by the time a disaster hits, they're like,
well, as long as it's not pop top, it's all right. That stuff the can opener stuff stays good for a very long time. You,
but
you don't want
that's
to
the
pick,
thing though. A lot of these things are pop top now.
yeah. Freeze dried food is the best option, but it's also expensive. Freeze dried food, you can get really good, complete nutritional meals, and they retain 99% of their nutritional value. A lot of times, foods that get cooked, fruits and vegetables that get in the cans, they're heated up and they lose their critical vitamins like vitamin C in the steam. Uh, Freeze dried food doesn't. It retains its vitamin value, but it's more expensive. I actually own a freeze dryer, so I do a lot of my own in that regard. I have about 1,000 pounds of beef that is shelf stable sitting in my storage area, and it's been there for 3 years so far. And I was buying it at $2 a pound,
Right.
and just with inflation alone, I paid for my freeze dryer. Because I was to buy the same stuff today, it would cost me the price of a freeze dryer just
Oh
to,
yeah.
the
I
difference.
know I know my prices for meat, trust me. And yeah,
So
it's not fun.
in that, I mean, you can go all out and do the whole get your own freeze. They're actually coming down in price now compared to they were even a few years ago. Because there's only one company that makes them for home use, Harvest Right. And they're Mormons out of Utah, and Mormons are really, really into prepping. Always have been. It
Right.
never was a thing where they just decided to, you know. And if you can get in their network, you can get stuff at cost. They don't do their foods and their prep stuff at a profit. it's at cost.
Well, and I want to kind of wrap up a little bit of the food category, and we'll move on to maybe water. I think that's a crucial thing.
Yes.
But as we wrap up the food thing, I do want to add to what you were saying earlier. I like when you were talking about back in the day, and one of the things too, because of modern convenience, right? But back in the day, it's like it was just a way of life. Like they hunted, they gathered meats. They found ways to like dehydrate the meats, last them longer. But also they would have, of course, the outdoors. They had like the cold storage, where they had the root cellars. They would can stuff like that too. But back in the day, they lived that way. They always knew like, hey, we got winter coming up. They always stocked. When times were right, they harvested and gathered up all the food, hunted all the things through the year to prep for winter and surviving and things like that when you couldn't maybe hunt or you couldn't maybe grow something, things like that. So survival was just a way of life. Now we just take it for granted all the time. Like, I'm going to survive every day because I can just go to the store or go to the fast food place, whatever. I have food, this and that. So when people get caught off guard, they're like, what do? I have nothing in here. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of touch on that. It was just a way of life back then, period.
Yeah.
You just lived that way, and it was natural for people. They enjoyed it. They found ways to be crafty, and they were good at it. That's why the human species survived.
Even in like the book The Hobbit or the movie The Hobbit, they illustrate this because Tolkien lived in a time where that was the case. Your wealth was determined by how much you had in store, how much was in your cupboard. That was how you could tell somebody was wealthy. And you remember in The Hobbit, Bilbo was really, really happy and satisfied with himself because he had a cupboard full of food. He had fish. He had this big plate. He was going to sit down to a big, luxurious dinner. And then the dwarves show up and then basically eat him out of house and home. He was like feeling like he was decimated and his life was ruined because all of his food was gone. That was
right.
That was the sense of what it was really like back when Tolkien was alive. They had that mentality that the food that you have and the stores that you've got prepared for any scenario, anything that can happen, made you a wealthy person. And it wasn't how much you had in your bank account.
Think about it. If you had like, X amount in your savings, they were like, okay, I can pay my bills for the next 3 months with my savings account, right? Mm-hmm. Well, if your savings account all of a sudden got wiped out because of a Bank of America glitch, like worst case scenario, you can't pay your bills, whatever, right? But you can still survive. You can still be alive. You might be homeless, worst case scenario. But now food, if you had 3 months of food and it got wiped out and all of a sudden you're out on the streets, it's survival now. It's your life. Your life depends. So what's more important, the money or the food? So I see where your point is for sure. Food would make you, in my opinion, rich compared to money.
When the time comes and they do the thing that I'm talking about, where we have our what's called the 10 days of darkness, there will be people who don't have enough, and they're going to be coming to others to see what they have, to see what they can get.
Sure.
So prepping also requires you have, pew-pews and freedom seeds to basically defend what you have in case somebody decides to kick in your door in the middle.
We're going to get into that. We're going to save that best for last. No, I want to get into defense as well, because once you have, like you said, let's protect it. But let's continue on the basics of survival. We kind of covered food. So I think for those people out there, you should pretty much get it. Plan your diet, learn your shelf lives, learn your nutrition on what's going to be survivable. Again, and for people like me, that's carnivore and I get all my nutrition from meat, believe it or not, there is, I want to say, it's either Patriot Supply or maybe it's another one that's some other Patriot one. There's like one that they have like meat, like buckets of meat that have huge shelf lives, 25 years, I think.
Yeah, it's
But
pre-cooked, so you don't have to actually, have to cook
right. But even somebody like me, there's meat options out there. And even if like so as diehard as I am now on a carnivore diet, a lifestyle, remember, we have the capabilities as human beings to switch to omnivore.
it.
We can switch to omnivore. We choose to be omnivores. We're actually carnivores, but we're obligated carnivores, but we choose to be omnivores. But the point is, you can, for survival purposes, we've always done it in history. When the megafauna was dying out at one time, we started the agriculture industry, or
Hmm.
the age of agriculture about 10, 12,000 years ago. We did that for survival purposes. We just kind of stopped.
Yeah,
We never stopped doing it.
it was
It was a way to feed the masses after a while. But the point is, like I said, there's if in a survival, I'm going to eat pasta, or I'm going to eat carbs. I'm going to eat things that I normally wouldn't eat because my body can adjust and survive.
Mhm.
So again, for those of you out there, and if you're hung up on a specific diet or something, if you're like, well, I'm vegan, how am I going to do this on a survival? Well, either you survive or die, so you need to make a decision. Hey, when it comes to survival, F whatever diet you're doing and get your nutrition and calories. And then once life changes, and who knows if we survive a post apocalypse type
Mhm.
thing, and we're like in an apocalypse thing, and you're out there and you're surviving and you're hunting, hey, start eating. You can eat all your meat you want and go out and hunt it. But
Yeah, well, in that
until then,
regard, you want to be careful too, because your gut actually has, bacteria that are
sure.
accustomed to your current diet.
Oh yeah,
If
you
you
got to
switch
adjust it. There's going to be a 2 week period.
Yeah, if you do it too quickly, too much, you're gonna feel sick and you're gonna wish you were dead, because it just your gut will not be processing the food right, and
Right.
it's just gonna be a mess all the way around. So
Right.
you
No, I'm
want to
just saying, like when it comes to survival, you're
right,
going to do what you got to do.
yeah, you're gonna eat all kinds of stuff. I mean, during
So
the potato famine, people were eating their lawns. They were literally eating grass because they could not, fill their bellies enough with any other kind of food. They would put stones, they would swallow stones so their gut didn't feel heavy,
right.
or didn't feel empty. It had some weight to it, just to get past the pain. So we are the survivors of people who survived starvations many, many times throughout history. And it's a shame that we took no lesson from that. It's really in our DNA to make sure that we have preps. We're ready for any scenario. And in our modern time, we have zero excuse, really.
Well, let's talk about water because that's important. We spent a lot of time on food, and which, of course, obviously is very important. Now,
Yeah.
God, one more thing too, I want to add. It's important to know, people may not realize this too. The human body can fast for sometimes 30 to 40 days. So
Mhm.
water, that's why I wanted to say fasting, because this is kind of a segue into water as well. Water is very key though. Now,
Yes.
they said you can go like a month without eating, believe it or not. You may not think you can. And I've fasted for, I think my longest now is like what, 4 days. I did like a 4-day fast, and I was like, hey, this is not too bad actually.
Yeah.
But I know you can go more as well. So, anyways,
3 weeks it's the rule of three. You can go 3 seconds without air. You can go 3 days without water, and you can go 3 weeks without food. If you go, there's variations based on your health, whether or not you can do any one of those things.
right.
But 3 weeks is after that, your organs will start to eat themselves, and you'll start to have failure in your various organs, whether it be pancreas, kidneys, liver, and so on, because your body is trying to survive off of what is not being used, so it
Right.
starts to consume itself. This
And
is
I think that's also varying on body type too, because if you're skinny,
yeah,
then yeah, your body can start to. But if you have excess fat and you still have fat on your body, you still will be able to still burn that and your body will still use up as much fat as possible before it starts attacking itself as
Yeah.
well.
Well, the fattiest spot on your body is not your ass; it's your brain. That's your synaptic nerves and all of that are held in a trellis of fat. And when the fat is like anorexics have this, they will literally, their brains will start to atrophy because their body is pulling the fat out of their brain and consuming it. And you don't get any smarter in a scenario where you need to have your wits. So
All right, so water. Let's talk water. So what's obviously buy cases of water. But
yeah, that's good, cases of water, but you don't want to let those sit on concrete because the acid that's in the concrete will actually leach into the plastics, and then the plastics on the inside where the water is at will start to dissolve, and you'll be drinking a lot of the plastic beads essentially
right.
that are really toxic and never come out of your system. So you want to, if you're going to buy the big cases of water, you want to have it out sitting on cardboard or on a pallet or something like that. You want to.
That's a good tip. That's a good tip because a lot of people keep them like in their basements or garages or something right on the. I've seen that. I've seen people put them on the concrete floor. So that's a good tip. If I ever see anybody do that, I'll let them know too because I didn't even know that as well. I knew that just the bottles and the plastic weren't really good anyways, but I'd rather do a little bit of microplastics than dying if I
Yeah.
have to. But the concrete is a good tip. I like that. So let's say somebody doesn't prepare very well, or let's say they start to burn through. Maybe they only have like a case or two of water, which isn't going to last them hardly at all. So
Yeah, you need
what's the techniques for water?
Well, water, it's also a daily allowance kind of thing. You need 2 gallons of water per person per day. That is what is consumed on a regular basis. Now, most people don't drink that much, of course, but it's everything from cooking to washing to washing yourself and washing clothes to maintain sanitary environment. 2 gallons per person per day. Now you can get these 55-gallon blue barrels and fill those up with water, and then every 6 months drop. They actually have pre-measured chlorine tablets that you can buy that you just drop one every 6 months, and anything that's in there that may have grown because you filled it up with the garden hose, it kills that and maintains, and it's safe for you. As long as you don't keep dropping chlorine in it. It's,
Right.
Every 6 months you drop it.
Follow the directions.
Yeah, it's about the size of a Tic Tac. You just drop it in there and it keeps it clean.
Okay.
Or
now, Kat brought up a reverse osmosis water system is what she uses.
Those are the best. If you've got power and you've got the water coming in off of your well or from the city, that's the best of everything, especially if you got like an 8-stage reverse osmosis with the UV light, all of that. It kills all the viruses. That's the best. And if a disaster scenario that's working, awesome. You're like literally royalty at that point. A lot of people will have that, and then they have to harvest rainwater. Now, rainwater is very, very clean all by itself, but it doesn't stay clean for very long because mosquitoes, critters, they like that water too. And if you've got a rain barrel that you're collecting that water in, you got to do the same thing with the chlorine tablets. Now, once you have that, you can get what's known as a Berkey. It is basically a high-end filtration system like a Brita filter, but it's a lot better. The filters themselves are about $100 each. And then you can put them in like a 5-gallon bucket and do 2 buckets, gravity fed, and you've got 5 gallons of really, really clean water, and it cleans out the chlorine. So you get to the point to where you could actually put in swamp water into one of these things, and it will come out really, really clean. It's a very good filtration system that you can, essentially use without electricity and get clean rainwater or swamp water, and you have fresh water to use and drink from. I have a Berkey for that reason.
Right.
Now,
I think it's important to also interject and just say, folks, remember, we're talking mostly about disaster prep.
right.
Post-apocalyptic prep, I think, is even more in depth, and there's a lot more craziness to talk about on that. So I don't want to get too much into like a lot of those type of scenarios, because now we're talking like, was there a nuclear problem? And we're talking about underground, a whole different areas.
Yeah.
So disaster prep. So I just want to also say too, like how long do you think somebody should be prepared for disaster prep? Like as far as just immediate, like if somebody's like, we're not going to have apocalypse, but I want to at least prepare for disaster.
Mhm.
How long of time frame do you think they should prepare for? Like when, because you talk about 2 gallons per person per day.
Right.
We talk about planning out the diets. So how long of supply do you think they should have? Like a 2 weeks, a month? What do you think?
Well, we'll go with what the government says.
Because they're always right.
Yeah. Well, prior to the lockdowns, FEMA suggested that everyone have at least 2 weeks, 14 days worth of food storage in their house at all times. Have their first aid kit, have enough water for the 14 days, yada, yada. That was their suggested limit. After the lockdown, they said 6 months. So they're now in a position where they're saying that you're on your own. And people who are going through the current disasters with the hurricanes in your neck of the woods, they're realizing that really hard. They're on their own. FEMA just really does not have the resources, whether for whatever reason, and there's a lot of finger pointing going on with that, but the government is not going to save you. So having the 6 months is not that hard, especially if you do it over a long period of time. And a long period of time, I mean 6 months. If you start now by just adding a little bit of extra to your grocery list and putting those away, inside 6 months, you'll have 6 months. It's not that difficult. And it's not really going to break the budget if you just go a little bit more. And the foods too, you can go with getting macaroni and cheese. You don't have to get the high-end stuff, as long as you've got something that is going to put food in your belly for a period of time.
Right.
Macaroni and cheese was actually created as a food ration during the Depression. It wasn't created as a, hey kids, let's have some macaroni and cheese. It was food that was created by Kraft to make sure people got food. And back then it was only like a penny or two for a box of macaroni and cheese. It was really cheap. It wasn't very nutritious, but people didn't starve.
Right.
It was like an MRE, a meal ready to eat, because children were becoming really malnutritious with rickets and all kinds of things. So it was a program the company created for that reason. It just kept going because, well, there's poor people all the time, everywhere, anyway.
Right.
But
no, I mean, and that's good. I would say, like, I would even see the difference. Just say, look, minimally between what the government says, I would say at least 3 months. Try to get you a 3 month supply at least, because most disasters nowadays. Now, again, you look at some of the hardest hit areas. Some of these areas like Asheville, North Carolina, right now, when are they going to get power? When are they going to get, any resemblance of something? Again, but a lot of these hurricanes, a lot of these disasters, earthquakes and stuff, most of the time we'll get, if your is still around and these things, most of the time power is getting restored usually within 2 weeks. Most of the time, again, on average, most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say for me, I would feel good at least knowing I had 3 months worth of stuff that I knew that I could just be in lockdown in my home. And so I want to move on from water. Again, and folks, if you really want to know even more tips, again, Stacey's got courses out there. There's also going to be more materials out there online. I would definitely suggest, but I think a big piece of advice is start doing it. Like
Yeah.
start prepping. But let's get into
Got to create a plan. I mean, you can't do anything
Right.
without. You can do it by the seat of your pants. You're only going to spend money that you didn't really need to spend. You
Right.
create the plan of your nutrition value, your budget, and stay within it. Be disciplined. And
Stacey mentioned this too, and I want to mention this also. Again, Walmart has first aid kits that are very cost effective. Like they really are. Like you can get the big ones that's got 200 to 300 multiple pieces in there, piece kits. Now, what I recommend, don't go to the camping supplies. Like don't go to the camping where they sell first aid kits in the camping sections, right? Because they overcharge them just because they give you this cute little hiking style case and all this stuff, and you're only going to get like 100-piece kit. But if you just go to the regular first aid section at Walmart, you can get big generic first aid kits like that's got, like I said, 200-300 pieces for an absolute good cost. And they got small ones. I recommend get some small ones as well. I've got 4 right now. I've got a big one, and I got kind of medium. I got a couple of those, and I got like a small one. And I keep the small one again in more of a mobile spot. I got a couple more that's somewhat accessible. And so I have them to where, like, look, the first aid, the big one is going to be available, for the most part, but the other 2 are going to be there for sure. And then that little one's kind of always there where it's like, hey, worst come to worst, I got this little one right here too that's going to help out for just an immediate, quick whatever. So, and all of that was fairly cheap.
Yeah, there's in a disaster scenario where the hospitals are shut down or overwhelmed, you don't want to be in that environment unless it's absolutely life and death, because you're going to be in a facility that actually has a lot of infection, viruses and bacteria and things of that kind. And if you were not really in a life and death situation, you could be when you walk out, because they have staph infections and all kinds of other stuff, and antibiotics and things of that kind are going to be in real short supply.
A good example is like when people in a disaster, they might get cuts and gashes, and you might get a gash on your arm that's, open pretty good, but it's not life threatening, and you might need stitches. Well, in a lot of these full first aid kits, they even have butterfly stitches. You may not want to do the needle and thread, okay? But what I'm saying is they got the stitch. You can just use tape, and you can close that up with tape, like butterfly stitches.
And super glue.
Right.
Actually, super glue, you tape it up as close as you can get, and you pinch it, drop some super glue. Super glue is hyperallergenic. You drop the super glue in the wound and pinch it closed, and it will stay. It works just as well as stitches do, as long as you're not an asshole about it and start flexing your muscles and popping it open.
Right. Watch this.
But Amazon has a lot of really great stuff too. You look, they have whole suitcases with literally 1,000-piece kits with a defibrillator and all kinds of other stuff inside, given the situation. But they have every kind of first aid kit make and the pieces themselves.
Right.
So on that front, shop around, keep within your price range and what you need and what it's for. Your personal scenario, you may have more health problems than others, but at the same time, you want to be able to be prepared for the disaster that may be coming. You get a bullet wound, or debris hits you in the face or right on the bridge of your nose or something. You want to be able to have a Band-Aid that's going to be able to stitch that up, and so you don't have to go to the hospital. Now some of us even crack it on the hood of their car.
I want to just also throw something out there that I think is important, and maybe you can touch on this too. Is I also think, okay, we have a disaster impending. Okay. So let's say you're in an area, you know, there's a hurricane coming. Maybe you can't evacuate. Because let's be realistic. Everybody's like, why didn't these people evacuate? Why didn't these people evacuate? Not everybody can evacuate. I'm sorry. It's unfortunately, we live in a society where just money and the way our lives are, and some of us just have nowhere to go, no gas, no money for gas. Sometimes it's not as easy as people think to get out of town.
No.
But my point where I'm going with this is some people can get out of town. But the people that hunker down, these disaster tips can help you, especially or disasters that spring up where there was no evacuation possible. It could have been a tornado or earthquake, things like that.
Right.
But
black swans, you need to be ready for the black swan, not for wait till the last minute and everybody's running to the store to get supplies.
Right.
But
where I'm going with this too is that you want to consider a bug out bag.
Yeah.
Now I'm not talking about post-apocalyptic. I know a lot of people when they think bug out bag, they're thinking, oh, this is for like apocalyptic stuff and you got to go, you got to grab. But what I'm talking about is if you are somebody that's like, hey, I need to leave and evacuate. Just remember, as we're seeing now, as you saw images of people stuck on the highway trying to get out of Florida, if you have an emergency survival kit bag, that's like a mini survival bag that could help you in those scenarios while you're mobile and you're evacuating, and that's important too. So that's why I wanted to mention that, and so I'm going to let you touch on that too.
Yeah, well, you want to just not have the suitcase bug out bag of your clothes. You want to have the supplies that you would normally have in your home in a bag as well that you can just grab and go. That's
right.
The whole idea of the bug out. You don't want to have to think about it. You don't want to have it wonder what you've got, any of these kind of things that you can leave behind. People leave their phone chargers in hotels all the time because they're always trying to rush to that noon checkout time.
Right.
Imagine if you're like freaking out because there's, a hurricane coming. You're going to forget all kinds of things that you need. You want to have that bag of extra stuff ready to go on a coat hanger or in your closet or whatever it is. Grab it and go. That's a medical bag. Your first aid kit. You can have one of those. Your
changes of clothes. I mean, you could have a suitcase style or something that you can take that's got like solar. Like there's these they're just little solar panel, they're cheap. Little solar battery that you can put out there to charge your phone. It might take you all day, but if you're stuck on the side of a road somewhere in the future, you can just lay that in your dashboard. Exactly. Right there.
This one's got a compass and everything.
Yeah.
This costs $7.
Yep.
And it's has two charges to it. I can charge two phones with this on one full charge on it.
But even if you had like one of those in your bug out bag, one of those, you had like a medium first aid kit, maybe a large first aid kit, like, the one size, but whatever size wise, but things like that also in your bug out kit.
Yeah. You want to have what you're going to need already good to go so you don't have to think about it. And you can put yourself in all these scenarios of what you're going to need based off of this scenario and that scenario. And once you have it all packed up,
all of a sudden you got a U-Haul, a bug out U-Haul. You're like, wait a minute, I thought of way too many scenarios.
Yeah, well, it's all based off of your own life. If you've got you, the wife, and the kids, you want to have enough supplies for everyone involved.
Right. Well, and just again, even if it's just 3 days worth of clothes, and they can just be generic t-shirts, jeans or something, an extra pair of shoes that you don't, that you just are like, hey, these shoes are, it could be an older pair. Like I have a pair of shoes that are still good. I just don't wear them because they look like crap because they got old, but they're still good. So it's like, hey, throw them in your bug out bag, and you're never using them now. So throw them in your bug out bag because you might need them later. Who knows?
Or you can get a pair of the rubber boots that go over your shoe, that they go up to your knee, kind of stuff. Because in the disaster scenario, you're always going to come across wet, sloppy, muddy, all kinds of nastiness.
Some muck boots.
Yeah. Well, even if you're having to trek through, you get a flat tire and you have to trek through the ditch to, get to the other side or whatever it is. There's snakes and all kinds of stuff along the road. You get bit by a snake trying to cross the street. That'll suck too. You got the rubber boots, the snake can't hurt you. So, I mean, it's the little things that are like that where you can be more proactive rather than reactive. And that's really what all it comes down to, is being proactive for the black swan events that you didn't see coming, but they happen anyway.
Right.
You're prepared. They say luck favors the prepared. And those who are usually unlucky are usually ones who aren't prepared.
And so when you say luck favor the prepared, that means, folks, be informed. Like, keep informed. Try to keep up with the news. I know the news is filled with a lot of bad things sometimes. Some people are like, I don't like watching the news. I'll watch the weather.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, watching the weather is good, but sometimes there's things in the news itself that could possibly prepare you for, because it may not always be a weather event. That could be a disaster. It could be an upcoming impending man-made event that could be the disaster. So pay attention to the news, folks. Keep yourself informed. And like Stacey was saying, make a plan. Make a plan. Come up with a plan. Start telling yourself. So what we talked about, like, let's just say you go with what I said, 3 months. Mm-hmm. And then you listen to Stacey and say, okay, 3 months plan. How many people in my house? So let's do the math, right? Start doing the math. How much water are you going to need to survive for that 3 months per person? Plan for that. Because even though, yes, you might not use, like Stacey said, you might not use 2 gallons a day for yourself. Maybe you take a shower once a week. Maybe you have a creek nearby that you can kind of bathe in and save yourself some water. Who knows? There's all kinds of ways, right? But plan for the worst, right? The 2 gallons, do the math. And then the same thing with your diet. Plan that out, like Stacey was saying. Come up with nutritional meals. Know how long the shelf lives are. Now, granted, if you're only planning for 3 months, most of your pop top cans, all that stuff, all those things, they'll be fine. So, but at least go through, figure out your calories, nutrition, all that stuff, and then plan that out per person. How many calories per person? How much food is that going to be realistically? And most of you that have families, you kind of know how much everybody eats. So, you'll just have to figure out, well, what's the minimum we can eat on calories?
Right, rationing. On that front, too, the freeze-dried food and the Patriot companies and things like that, they're trying to make their product as affordable to people as possible because it is expensive. And when they do that, they kind of fudge their numbers a little bit on the nutritional value.
Right.
They say that what we're selling here is, a week's supply of food that you can have for 25 years. A week's supply for how many people?
Right.
It's for one person. And then when you look at the actual serving sizes, it's actually half the serving size of what you actually need.
And that's a good point, because that's one thing I would definitely say, because when I was shopping for, and I keep bringing up Patriot Supply, there's a few other ones that I was looking at.
Yeah, there's a whole bunch out, Mountain House and things of that kind.
And you really do got to pay attention to serving size, what you're going to get, the value of, like, hey, if I spend $700 for a 3-month supply, but then you notice it's one person, and then like you said, the serving size, you're just like, wait a minute. So I'm only going to get this amount of food. That's it per day.
Yeah.
Like, that's not going to be enough. It's more like a 45-day supply.
Yeah.
So
for one person.
Right. For one person. So anyways, back to what I was saying is, so plan out your water, plan out your diet. And like Stacey's pointing out, pay attention to serving sizes, make sure you have enough food, actually enough food for the 3 months. Mm-hmm. If you can, always give yourself extra, right? Because something might go bad. You might open a product up. It might be already bad. It might have gotten punctured or damaged, because remember, we might have had a disaster where some of your food gets compromised. So always try to plan a little bit more ahead on that. First aid, extremely important. Again, water, don't store your water on concrete. That's a great tip. Even Kat didn't know about that. So, so again, start planning ahead of time. There's so much more we can cover too, but we're gonna run. We're almost running out of time. One thing that I think is important that I want to get into a little bit is self-defense, because in a disaster, we're not talking about post-apocalyptic, which yes, that it's also going to be true, but even in disasters, unfortunately, when you're in areas that are devastated, people start to loot because they want to survive. It's not necessarily that they're trying to steal property, but they are starting to look for food sometimes, or water, and survival. They don't want to die.
Right.
And they may be displaced. Maybe their home is completely gone. Maybe they prepped, but everything's gone. So they are going to look, and they're going to do what it takes to survive sometimes.
Well, on that front too, you got the pews and the self-defense and all of that, but you can actually mitigate that psychologically with the neighborhood if you have a prep that you put together just for that purpose, for disasters. In Louisiana, they like to do big gumbo or jambalaya cooks, where they have a big pot where they make an ass ton of jambalaya. It's cheap, really cheap and easy to make, and they will offer it to everybody in the neighborhood. When they do that, the looting craters because people's bellies are full.
Right.
You know? And if you can have that kind of a thing, you create a public relations issue where you are now the good guy in the neighborhood that no one's going to bother because you fed them, you fed their children. They don't want to be in your bad graces because you helped them when they really needed it, as well as provided people with the necessary stuff they needed in the moment. So they were freaking out, and suddenly they're not anymore.
Well, that sounds nice, but I say get a fucking gun. So
well, yeah, they all got guns right here too. I got lots.
Get a knife. Definitely get survival tools like hatchets, knives, things like that's going to help you to cut, like hunt, like hunting knives, not just knives for self-defense, knives for hunting, because again, in survival, I mean, I'm telling you, I don't care if I'm displaced, even with a hurricane and this city is devastated, if I have to, I'm a hunt, because I got a gun. If I got to shoot it, there's deer all over, and hey, we'll make it work. But also,
you have to have the right one for the right job too. You don't want to have a 9mm handgun and have to go out and try and hunt deer. You have to have the right tool for the right scenario.
Sure.
And know how to use them and know the safety behind them.
Right. And that's what I was asking to point out too. Training. Make sure if you're the kind of person, maybe you watch this and you're like, you know what, these guys make sense, and I need to go out and I need to break down and get a gun, despite maybe I'm a liberal or something and you didn't like them. But look, it's not about that. It's about survival. It's protection, but also hunting. Like Stacey said, if you need to go out, get a hunting rifle. A lot of these AR-15s that everybody's so scared about, a lot of them's hunting and things like that.
Yeah,
you can hunt with them. That you can learn. Yeah, you can learn about ammo types as well, so you're not doing something wrong with ammo types. But it's not real complicated. Once you learn the basics of gun safety and you follow like the 4 main principles of gun safety, you're not gonna really have an accident. Right. Guns they're only for people that are uneducated or uninformed, and they don't know any better, and then they, make mistakes.
Well, there's the cocky ones too. I know of plenty of police and military who've shot themselves in the junk. It's because they did not respect the weapon. They got too comfortable. They didn't follow the protocols, and they ended up shooting themselves literally right in the dick.
Right. Well, there's 4 rules. And if you learn the rules, there's 4, and you will never have if you follow those 4 rules, you should almost never have an accident. The only time is if something like there are certain SIG handguns that were recently discovered too. Like if you drop them, it
Yeah.
can discharge. So
The
if you
hammer guard.
accidentally drop, like that's an accident. If you drop something and it discharges because of a weapon malfunction,
Yeah.
that's different. But generally, if you follow the 4 and if you take gun safety, you will learn these 4. And
Ruger has that too with the 5.7. The hammer guard was not put in the right spot. So if you drop it, even with the safety on, it will fire a chambered
right,
round.
right, and like what you're talking about, and even Cap said overconfidence. If overconfidence just means that you probably ignored one of the 4 rules, and that's why I said you really want to make sure you learn. It just there's courses all over. A lot of them are free, even online. There's free courses online for just learning uh, gun safety. So go online, take a course. Even if you think that you know, if you're just even if you have some guns, some of you have guns, and you may not still feel comfortable with them. Go back, take a course, take another course, get comfortable with them. I was taking mine to work when I first had one of my first handguns. I was taking it with me everywhere I went, and I was like, anytime I could, I was dropping the magazine. I was clearing the chamber because it was a semi-automatic, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm like racking it. I'm getting used to racking. I'm getting used to pulling the slide back, locking it in position. Sometimes I would dismantle the gun. I would take the slide off and take the barrel out. Break it down. Get comfortable putting it back together. Just get used to the gun, keep it with you, and get to the part where it's not hard, it's not difficult to deal with, but it's going to be something that you're going to be able to use.
Yeah.
Because even
Operating a motor vehicle is a lot more complicated. So if you can drive and you can operate a motor vehicle, you can do this. Even people who are really bad drivers are still no more than it takes to operate a weapon effectively and safely.
yes, and like because Kat said she's a hunter, and she said, "You betcha, I will eat and feed who needs it."
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's the thing. In disaster, we shouldn't have to get to that point where you're out actually hunting. I just brought that up because again, this is something that guns can be useful for other than self-defense in a survival situation if you're in a disaster. Because also too, this show goes out anywhere. So you could be in a disaster where you're in a remote area and you have an avalanche or something or a mudslide or something, and you're in a remote area and you may have to survive out where it's not like a city disaster type thing or something like
Right.
that. So
And
you
that's
may
another
have
thing too. Know that the region that you're in, you have survival tips and survival scenarios that are unique to you depending on where you live.
right.
Things that grow wild that you can eat, know what you can eat and what you can't eat.
Good point.
You have in the mountains area, they don't have a lot of fruits, but they do have a lot of nuts that grow off of like the pine trees. You can eat those. You can actually eat the bark off of certain trees, and it has a lot of nutritional value too. It tastes like bark, but you can survive on it, and people have. Lewis and Clark did that when they were traveling across the great wilderness trying to find the West Coast. They the Indian tribe showed them what they could eat on their way. They didn't have to carry lots and lots of food with them because the land actually provided. So,
Right. But again, you're also at that time they were living in a time where they could prep, so to speak, even if it was only for a day or two or a couple, but they could build up their stores with their wagons, things like that, because they knew and they had certain things, even like hardtack. There were certain things that
Heckman and hardtack is awful. Heckman is good. It's has a lot of fat to it.
yeah,
And then you also have beef jerky.
right.
They smoked their meat to it was dry as bark, but it would stay forever. And
Just hang it on the side of the wagons and let it, dehydrate and cook in the sun, or like low cook in the sun and dehydrate. And they can sit there and eat jerky and keep them, fed. But my point, what you were talking about, they're exploring and they can live off the land because they were used to that. We're not, as modern folk, we're not used to that. So I think Stacey brings up a good point. Is like educate yourself to where you can at least learn some basics. Like, and don't just learn and then forget about it, because I learned a ton of survival shit.
Yeah.
But guess what? I forgot a lot of it now. I'm sitting here going, which plants was it again that I can eat? And like I'm thinking of stuff going, God, I used to know this stuff. So refresh yourself, folks.
I have several books, actual books, PDF books in my courses that I give away for free. In the prepper beginners preppers course,
See, take his course.
it has a whole bunch of information that you can download and read at your leisure, and it has all of these recipes for a lot of different survival foods like peckermint.
Hey, I'm not gonna lie. I actually was thinking about taking your course because I get coupons from you. Like on because I'm on your automatic. Because I did take one of your courses. I took one of those remote viewing courses, but I still get coupons that are automatically sent out from you. And one of them was the prepping course that sent out recently, and I was like, hey, I should take it because I really do need to catch myself back up, and and it's not like I know everything, I don't. So it'd be nice to learn, more, and so trust me when I say I'm probably gonna be taking your prepper course, for sure. It's just a matter of time right now, but I'm literally gonna be taking that one. Out of all your courses, that's probably my next one is your prepper course.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the stuff in the course we've talked about in this video, in truncated version, of course. The course itself is 2 hours long, but in it also has supplemental material that can help you, do what you need to do as far as like create the plan. It has a basically a little book that you can write it all down on, and it leads you along the way of for your food, for your water, for your other supplies like your bullets and your pews and things of that kind that
Right.
you want to have on a list written in hard copy, because you lose power. Going back to the PDF is not going to do you any good. You can
Right.
print it out. You can print out the book that I gave you and have that on, in a little binder or whatever. Have that ready in hard copy. That will be an enormous value to you in the event. Because when stuff's going on, you're not thinking straight anyway. You want to be able to have something you can go to and say, oh, okay, this is what we can do here and here and here.
Right.
But the idea is you want that beforehand. You don't want to wait until it's in the rearview mirror to go, oh, I shoulda, coulda, woulda. You want to have it before.
I know, and I know what that's like because I start to panic. Like even at my job, I've got like I have this procedure I have to do, and like I have to enter like specific information to set up this for some when I'm trying to set up phone service like out in the field, and I'm at a customer's house. Well, like not even just that long ago, I hadn't done it in a long time, so I forgot, right? And it's very specific information. I have to put everything in specifically, like the numbers, the there's an address thing that has to go in, and everything's got to follow a certain procedure. Well, we have these procedures, but I don't have the only copy I have is on a team chat. And the only way I get team chat is if I have internet connection on my phone. So if I'm out at a customer's house that has no, and I'm out in BFE and there's no internet at all, I'm like pulling this up and it's like, I can't pull up team chat. I can't pull up. So in a survival situation, you're right. You don't have PDFs. You can't always pull up a PDF or whatever,
Right.
To where you could be like, oh, there it is. So having something physically wrote down in a notebook or a journal or something, that makes sense. But folks, we need to
that front too.
Go ahead and wrap up with your final thoughts here, Stacey.
On that front too, there are apps out there for being able to download the entire database of Wikipedia onto your phone. So where if you don't have an internet connection, you can still access Wikipedia's information. Whether or not you trust it or not, that's up to you. But the ability to have that information at your fingertips when you don't have an internet connection is crucial for a lot of people.
Right. And Kat said here, like she said, yes, I have forgotten a lot of the information my grandparents taught me when I was a child, and walking in the woods with them, and they were telling me what I could eat and use for meds. And that's exactly what Tom was like. I grew up with my grandparents, and like they passed on a lot of wisdom, and they used to tell me all kinds of cool stuff because we grew up with like a garden. They taught me canning, they taught me so many things, and then I forgot so much of it. I forgot so many gardening tips, forgot they just would tell me like, hey, you can use aloe for and like the plants that you can use certain leaves and certain things, and you can this and that. So you're right, and that's why I say, folks, just take Stacey's course. He'll teach you. You can take that, but also just get educated. Get educated. But folks, we need to wrap it up. Unfortunately, I got to get to my next job.
Okay. I'll say one more thing on my course. if it's showing for more than $12 on the price, it changes daily. Udemy changes the price for me. I don't have anything to do with the price. I send out coupons for the $10 stuff for a limited period. But on the daily price changes for Udemy, I don't have no control over that. If it shows that it's like $50 or $75, don't buy it then. Wait a day and let them drop the price down to $10 or $12 because it will show up at that one price eventually. A day.
Way to undercut your numbers. Geez, some marketing manager you are. Geez.
Well,
just kidding.
What happens is people buy it for it, and then the price gets, they see the price being shown for $10 and they get pissed. Yeah. It's like, I have nothing to do with that. Right. Just wait till the price changes, or if you're a student of mine already, I send out the coupons, once a month that are good for 5 days. You use that. But don't pay $75. Don't pay $50. Wait till the price comes down.
No, I'm going to use your coupon for sure. But yeah, anyways, folks, I hope you enjoyed it. If you like this, and you want us to do more of these type of shows, because I know we talk about paranormal most of the time. We made a special exception for tonight to try to help people be even more prepped in the future. But hopefully if this helps, press like, subscribe, all that. We normally do this every Thursday at 9 p.m. We've been doing Wednesdays here lately. We're going to continue doing Wednesdays through October. And then once October is done, we will switch back to Thursdays because that's just the classic. That's where all the I have my night off. So normally I wouldn't have to go and run right now. We could keep talking for another 15, 20 minutes about survival stuff, which this probably normally would be like a 2-hour show normally between you and I if I didn't have to go to work. But other than that, guys, I hope you enjoyed it. And thank you, Kat, for being here through the show. Terry Lynn earlier, hope you feel better. And if I missed anybody else that popped in, I apologize, but I think that might have been it. But guys, other than that, tune in next week. Hopefully we'll have a guest next week as well, and we will be able to discuss some paranormal news. So also, let's see, anything else? This Saturday, if for those of you that want to meet me, I'm doing a meet and greet. I'm doing a live. I'll be live at the Bloody Fork. It's going to be in Bristol, Virginia.
That's fork.
I'll be there.
Fork, right? You say fork, right?
Yes, the Bloody Fork.
Okay, just want to make sure that was the second part of that.
So if you're going to be in the Bristol, Virginia area this Saturday, I'll be there probably. I think they open up at 7, so I should be there from 7 until, I don't know. I guess I would say at least I'll probably be there till at least 10 o'clock or something. I'm sure. But it is a haunted attraction, it's a haunted woods, but I'm going to be out in the other areas. I'm going to be doing some live interviews, book signing, whatever, meet and greet stuff. So I will be there, like I said, this October 12th, this Saturday at Bloody Fork. Also this tomorrow, we're doing another public investigation. We did one last week. Went amazing. We had some really good stuff that happened. Stacey knows a little bit about it as well. He wasn't there.
No, she was very impressed. I have to tell you that she posted on Facebook on how much that she was really impressed by that whole thing.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, her personal stuff on Facebook was glowing.
I don't know if we're friends on Facebook. I don't know, but I don't know if I seen it or not. But that's cool though. I'm really glad that so that's cool. I'm glad. So yeah, Stacey knows something that a major thing happened last week. It was really cool, very special moment during the public investigation. So hopefully tomorrow, whoever's going to be there tomorrow, this is in Bristol, Virginia as well. I was like, it was on Tennessee side now. It's on the Virginia side, but Pleasant Hill public investigation tomorrow. I think there's still some tickets available if you need to squeeze in there for tomorrow. But you can just look up Pleasant Hill on Facebook and you should be able to find it. So anyways, folks, gotta go. We'll see you next week.
Peace.